Hello, welcome to module number 2. I hope you guys have had a great week. I've enjoyed reading your discussion posts and starting to look at your assignments that you've submitted, and I think we're off to a great start. So we're going to jump into module number 2. Thought it would be good to just kind of give, I know one of the things I learned was that most of you have been, it seemed like maybe all of you have been in this cohort together, so it seemed like you have a pretty good understanding of each other. What I learned about us as a class is that I liked that we have a very good representation, that we range from a preschool teacher in Morgan to high school teachers in Liz, Michelle, Lauren, and Jessica. I like that we have that wide range of grade levels represented. I also like that we have a really good mix of general education and special education, and not just special education teachers, but Liz being in that transition program of students who are 18 to 21 getting ready for adulthood, Kyle being a resource teacher, and then Jessica with the role of IEP coordinator. So I like that we have a really diverse responsibilities that are represented in our class too. The other thing that I found interesting was how many of you in your introductions talked about how many leadership opportunities you already have in your positions. So Katie mentioned, I often find myself leading. Lauren said, I'm often chose to lead. And Dee talked about wanting to coach teachers. So each of you talked about various things like that, and I thought it was great to see how you're already using such great teacher leadership skills. I was amazed at how many of you already have your masters or have multiple masters and are continuing your education in this program. And so kudos to you. I was really pleased in going watching your introduction videos, and just think we're going to have a great session as we go through these next 8 weeks learning from each other. So I'm excited about what each of you will bring to the class. Couple of things, so I'll do this. I'll try to do this each module, is just highlight a few things that I thought were captured really well. Kyle mentioned in her post that most of the professional structures that she's been involved with have been data focused, but they've centered on collecting data to judge performance, not necessarily to tweak instruction in real time. And so I think that is a great point, that so many times, and one of the things we know about education is we oftentimes have a ton of data, but is it really being used to guide our instruction and tweak our instruction in real time? And that's what I hope that we'll grow in over the course of the next 8 weeks, is finding ways to collect data, meaningful data that really does impact what we do in the classroom. Then also Liz mentioned, as we were talking about technology, and this is a great segue into some of the things that we're going to talk about in this module, in module 2, is because Liz works in special education and primarily with students with significant disabilities, she mentioned that there is no one universal assessment that she can give to an entire class, but technology has given her so many more tools to modify and adapt assessments. And what I would challenge us to think through is that Liz's comment here is not just limited to students with significant disabilities. As we think about how we assess kids and the diversity of our classrooms, it may be that there aren't universal assessments for any of our classrooms that can do everything that we want them to do for all of our students. So our challenge as teachers is to find ways. We know there are times you're going to have to give the same test to a group of students. That's the curriculum in many of our schools. But some of those other ways that we document our learning for our students may need to be more differentiated as we try to really understand what our students know. So this post from Liz is a great segue into some of the conversations that we're going to have in Module 2 when we start thinking about the diversity of our classrooms and what things we can do to look at how we assess our students. So there's 4 videos this week. The first one is Every Kid Needs a Champion, and you may have seen this before. This has kind of made the rounds a little bit. Number one, I just like that she focuses so much on relationships and the impact that we have as teachers in our kids' lives and the importance of relationships. But there is a part of it that's also focused on how she views assessment and how she addresses a student who scored a 2 out of 20 And so I think that that frames nicely for us how we approach assessment and how we use it to guide our approach with our students. Second video is from Dr. Doug Reeves, and he's a pretty well-known researcher in the area of curriculum instruction and assessment. So there will be other videos from Dr. Reeves that you'll see over the course of this class. He does a nice job in some pretty short videos of highlighting some key points about assessment. And so one of the things that he'll talk about in this video is he challenges the notion that we assess kids too much. He thinks we need more frequent, more formative assessments to really guide our instruction. I won't tell you a whole lot about the bowling video just because I want it to pique your interest for you to figure out and watch the video to see what does bowling have to do with assessment and instruction. But you'll see as you watch the video. And then finally there's an overview of UDL, Universal Design for Learning, and that's really kind of getting to what Liz's post was talking about and how we can differentiate our assessment. So what is Universal Design for Learning? So it really started from an architectural movement that was about how we retrofit buildings to be accessible for kids with disabilities. And so you think about how in the past we might add ramps to buildings after they were constructed to make them accessible. But what Universal Design for Architecture figured out was it's better if we embed the support into the design of that building. And so here you can see an example where the ramp was built into the steps, not a add-on after the fact. It was designed with diversity in mind. It was designed with accommodating people in mind. And so that's really the premise of Universal Design for Learning, is that we have for so long accommodated assessments and accommodated our instruction after the fact, or we've modified our assessments after the fact. So we design the test and then we go and say, well, the students need extra time, or this student might need fewer choices, and those kinds of things. Rather than really building in from the design phase, how can we make this assessment more accessible? The other thing that we know from universal design is while these things were in architecture were designed for people with disabilities, they end up benefiting all of us. So if you think about closed captioning on a TV, that was designed for students or for people who had trouble hearing. However, if you're at a restaurant or on a treadmill, sometimes you want the closed captioning benefits you, even though you don't have a disability. Or you think about when you're pushing a stroller and you use the ramp for the sidewalk. That was designed for people with disabilities, but it benefits others as well. And the same premise with assessment is if we can design more flexibility into our assessments from the design phase, it's going to benefit all students, not just those with disabilities. So these are the three main premises of UDL, talking about how we can build in more flexibility to keep kids engaged. How do we motivate students? Is all a part of that engagement based on brain research. Also, how do we present information? So that's the area of representation. How can we present information in multiple different flexible ways to tap into various aspects of a diverse classroom? And then finally, the action and expression network of UDL. So how do students express to us what they know and show us that they've mastered that content in different ways? So this gets to that assessment piece. A boilerplate test might be what we're required to do, but are there other ways that we can build in some ongoing assessments, some formative assessments that capture student expression of their knowledge in a different way? So you'll get some more information from that in the video on UDL. As we think about diversity, this visual sometimes comes to mind. I like the way that this presents diversity and how we make accommodations for kids. So if you think about this picture and the person, the little kiddo on the right, this is, sometimes you hear we need equality. Well, this is equality. Every student is given the same box, but you can see the student on the right, that isn't really what they need. It doesn't help. So equality isn't necessarily what we're going for, because that implies that every student needs the same thing, and we just know that not to be the case. So here's an example of equity. We have seen, the student on the left doesn't need any supports, but the student on the right needs 2 boxes to be able to see over the fence. And so that's a lot of what we have done traditionally when we think about diversity, for whether that be students with disabilities or any kind of diversity that presents itself in our classrooms, is we've accommodated or modified their instruction to be able to provide them an equitable experience. The piece that I would challenge, and kind of gets to the universal design approach, is that sometimes we just have to change the system. We just have to look at the barrier itself. Is our assessment, is the curriculum that we're exposing our students to, is it inherently creating a barrier that we just need to think differently? And if we modify that barrier and change the environment, we can really make a level playing field for all of our students. And so this really gets to universal design, thinking differently about how we design our instruction to change the environment altogether for our students. So this week you've got a couple of things, a discussion post about diversity and assessment. There's also a devotion for this week, and then the assignment 3 is starting again working towards your final project. So what are 3 sources that you have identified that you'll be able to use this towards your final project? So let me know if you have any questions as you start working on those. And the devotion this week references a scripture that is my favorite scripture, and it is, "Do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about its own things." And I think it was Dee in her introductory post that said it is really hard to balance everything as we think about being good teachers, being good parents, being good spouses, and doing this class on top of it, being good students. And so I know I have been there before. I know it's hard to balance everything that you all are balancing. So this scripture always really resonates with me, and it seems like sometimes this scripture finds its way into my devotions when I most need it, when I'm the most stressed. So hopefully you're finding yourself able to juggle all of the competing demands that are placed on you, and I'm looking forward to seeing your work this week. If you have any questions or need anything, feel free to reach out to me. Thanks a lot.